Can you believe it has been 5 years since the Stars hosted the Nashville Predators in the 2020 Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl? It seems like a lot has happened since then, yet I can still very vividly remember that entire experience. And especially on the heels of the Winter Classic now being played on New Year's Eve at Wrigley Field, where Chicago got their doors blown off. Not all that surprising by St. Louis, but it was arguably one of the greatest single event days in Dallas Stars franchise history, right? Now, you may argue playoff moments, playoff series, the Stanley Cup win rank higher, but one day in Dallas, one of the coolest experiences I think Stars fans have ever had. 85,000 fans, Troy Aikman dropping the puck, the ceremonial puck beforehand, the old World War II fighter planes doing the flyover, the pig races, obviously trying to get into the Cotton Bowl, an old or antiquated stadium, was kind of tough with that crowd, but everything was just really magical. The weather cooperated. What were your thoughts about that? Sean, we'll start with you.
My first thought was that I'll always go back to is the atmosphere around the game. Because if you'll remember, when it first happened, the NHL was going to have no tailgating. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but one of the things that they originally was like, oh, they're not going to allow tailgating. And there was a giant pushback and vocal pushback against that. And then thus relented and allowed tailgating. And I remember driving down there early that morning. Obviously, it was the first day of the year, and driving down there early that morning. And I spent about 2.5 hours walking around and talking to different tailgates. And one of my favorite stories that I think I've ever written was about just the tailgate at the Winter Classic. And I'll remember a story where I walked over and there was a group of people, and they brought up they had a portable toilet set up. Little portable toilets, a little pop-up toilet, and as I'm talking to them, there's a couple kids playing street hockey nearby and everything like that. And Luz is going to love this story, so make sure he's paying attention. Owen, give him a tap. And
he's still awake.
Okay. and a kid falls and starts crying, and then one of the dads downs the rest of his beer. And I'm looking around and like, well, that's the rule. Your kid cries, you finish your beer. And so that was the that was the drinking game. And so I remember just the atmosphere around there, and then the game itself just added everything on top of that. The atmosphere was great, but just kind of the whole from the morning through the game, the Radulov goal in front of that crowd was amazing on the power play there. To me, it's one of those like great moments. And there's times like we can kind of get caught in sports media where we're trying to be, I don't know, kind of clean and try to just cover the moment. But there's also time, like, I'm really happy that one of the things I did for that game was I watched the third period just from like the concourse. I went down and watched it from the concourse, to be outside, to be in the elements of it, and just kind of soak it all in. And it's one of my favorite memories from covering the Stars.
Sam?
Yeah, I was actually a fan only for that one. My roommate and I lived in Austin and drove up for the game, stayed over for a night before, and then went there early. Same thing as Sean was saying. It was so cool with the fair, trying to get in all those games, whether it was hockey or classic fair games. I can imagine there were millions of calories eaten by those fans on that day with the food that was available. Met the great Matt DeFranks walking into the arena, which was a glorious day for all. I'm sure as big for him as it was for me. But I remember distinctly we were sitting up in the upper deck, and I believe the Stars went on a power play at the end of the second. And I told my roommate, I said, I don't think they're going to score. Teams never seem to score when you get that period in between and the power play gets thrown off. And I felt like the game might not go the way the Stars wanted. And then they get I believe, Janmark deflection off his shin. And then obviously, as Sean said, the Radulov goal, which I still think was the loudest cheer I've ever heard in my life in person. Just the crowd erupting around the crazy fireworks once the Stars won. Watching Corey Perry walk for 3.5 miles to get off after he got ejected in the first period. It was just such a fun day. And I honestly, I would love to have covered it for a lot of the reasons, to get in the room and have all that access. But seeing that as a fan, it was one of the last games I ever went to as a fan. And it was just one of the better days of my life, and well worth the investment to get up here and pay for those tickets, and a huge moment for the Stars that will never be forgotten.
Luds?
Well, let's see. Sean said there was no tailgating. I beg to differ.
No, he said they originally weren't going to allow it. There was. In fact, he was at one.
Well, but
Yes.
I had a different kind of tailgating. So at 8 a.m., Eddie Belfour was
Need
launching.
a Miller Lite.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of those. But Belfour was launching his Belfour Spirits at the time. So at 8 a.m., there was this venue that we were having a little meet and greet. Well, it wasn't little, but we had a meet and greet for about an hour and a half. And so Eddie, myself, some of the other guys, JR was there, Jeremy Roenick was there. And so that was our breakfast. And then at 10 a.m., I had to walk through a bunch of people, and I had to go host the Spit and Chiclet guys. And so that turned into the Pink Whitney
The lunch?
Kitty Cotton lunch. That was 10 a.m.
Oh, so it's just brunch.
Yeah, that was brunch. And so about after 3 hours of that, Belfour and I were going on with Mike Tirico on, I guess that would have been NBC.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
and I'm trying to get my feet back underneath me, and we're sitting up in this little thing up there. And so Tirico asked me something, and I don't remember what I said, but then I knew he starts talking to Eddie, and I kind of checked out a little bit and kind of looking around. And then Eddie's answer was, I don't know about that. Ask Luds. And I don't even know what the hell the question was. So I kind of ad-libbed something. And then from there, it was very nice because obviously there was a lot of Stars fans there. So now Kim and I, we tried to, get in where we were going to go sit. But the good news is as soon as you walked in the stadium, people were recognizing who everybody is. And it was, can I get you a beer? Can I get you a beer? So it was one of them kind of days. And
Those are your favorite days.
I believe that I said, we're leaving the vehicle here and we're taking an Uber home. So about $150 later, we made it somewhere and made it back. So yeah, I wish we could, like, how many has Chicago had? How many had, where are we at with all this?
So
2 at Wrigley, right?
I think yesterday was their 7th outdoor game, I think.
Yeah.
For the
franchise.
For the franchise.
Yes. Yeah. 7th for them yesterday. Was their 7th outdoor game. So
Has there, to you two guys over there on the little screen must know who's had the biggest crowd, or how is it rated in there? How does that go?
the largest, so the Cotton Bowl one was the second largest crowd. The largest was the one, the Detroit
at the Big
Toronto
House.
One, at the Big House in Ann Arbor.
That's right.
Which was
okay. So
yeah.
Does Dallas not deserve another one?
I was just wondering, with Dallas being a good team, why they wouldn't pick Dallas to be the road team for one of these games. They're talking about Florida hosting an outdoor game at the Miami Marlins baseball stadium. Now, maybe
why not play Edmonton?
Maybe that's a Tampa versus Florida Panthers game, but
I can tell you why. Well, I can tell you why it's not Edmonton. It's because it is largely driven by TV right now, and it's the reason the Winter Classic is such a TV driven product. It's the reason the Winter Classic this year was on New Year's Eve as opposed to New Year's Day, because Turner was scared about going head to head rating wise with the college football playoff on January 1. And so while it was an amazing atmosphere, it was awesome for everyone there. To me, it's one of the most memorable ones. My pal Greg Wyshynski over at ESPN recently went and ranked all of the Winter Classics. I think he had the one in the Cotton Bowl either third or fourth, right behind I think he had it fourth behind the original one in Buffalo, the one at the Big House, and then the original Wrigley Field one, which was Detroit and Chicago, when both were actually decent. But that Dallas-Nashville one of the unfortunate long-term things that probably hurt the Stars was, at that time, it was the lowest rated Winter Classic of all time, ratings-wise. And TV numbers and ratings drive so much for the Winter Classic. That's why the Blackhawks are back in it all the time. Chicago's one of the largest TV markets.
Well, if that's the case, wouldn't they have the Buffalo Sabres involved? Because Buffalo frequently leads as far as percentage of hockey viewers and big events.
Well, that's why the Sabres have been in more games than some other teams.
Yeah.
But it's the same reason that Philly, you look at it now, works because they're a natural rival for Pittsburgh. But one of the other reasons that Philadelphia is in so many is Philly and Boston are also, when it comes to local TV viewership and ratings, Philly and Boston are consistently 1 and 2 in pure viewership. So it's the TV ratings drive so much of what the Winter Classic is. Now, and I think from a Stars perspective, I don't know. Like, I've talked to Brad Alberts after that event. Like, I don't know if they want to do another one like that. It's like such a nice frozen in time singular event for them.
Would it be hard
I
to
think
top that in Dallas?
I think so. I think it would be very hard to top that. It would be very hard to top that. I think the Stars. I don't think the Stars would have any issue ever being an away team at a stadium series or something like that.
You know, Sean, I was disappointed a couple years ago when Minnesota got to host their game and Dallas wasn't the opponent. That would have been really fun.
They picked Chicago.
Yep.
The Wild and the league, the Wild and the TV networks in the league picked Chicago. That was there you go. That was
Blackhawks again.
It's the fact of the matter is the Blackhawks they are a huge TV rating, and I
have two things I want to share real quick from my own experience. One was I wasn't as hyped about the outdoor game, the Winter Classic in Dallas, going into it as some people were, because it felt like it wasn't as exciting as it was when it first became a thing in the NHL. And then we went, worked the game, did the broadcast, all that stuff, and you realize Sean talks about TV ratings, and that is very important. The Winter Classic is a live event experience of a lifetime for many sports fans.
Yeah.
It's one of the better sporting events I've been to in a long time. The last 5 years or so, I think the top two things that I've both worked and attended, and I didn't go to any of the Rangers World Series games, which I'm sure were phenomenal, but it was the Winter Classic, and 2 years ago when Lionel Messi played at FC Dallas up in Frisco, 4-4 insane game. They lose on penalties. It was a ridiculously incredible thing, especially to have one of the greatest players to ever play soccer in Dallas. I also wanted to point out one quick thing because some people in our chat were talking about some of the connections. Matt Duchene scored the first goal of the game in the Winter Classic for the Nashville Predators on the power play, which was after the Corey Perry elbowing penalty. And our buddy Colin Blackwell took multiple penalties, including, Sam, the delay of game puck over the glass that led to that carryover power play that Janmark scored early in the third period. So one of the things that was great for me about that game is that I believe the estimates were about 20,000 of the 85,000 were Nashville traveling fans. And you could see their bright yellow scattered in clumps around their seating areas in the Cotton Bowl. It wasn't quite Texas OU where you have, the colors change at the 50-yard line. But it was so neat to have both sets of fans there because I think that made the atmosphere that much better.
One last thing, and before, we also have to remember, when you're remembering that day, Andrej Sekera scored a goal in that game.
Yes,
and that's
on
something
a rebound.
we have to always remember. Andrej Sekera, it took him he hadn't scored a goal indoors for 4.5 months, but he did score one outdoors.
It's funny, we're talking about one of the biggest days in Dallas Stars history, and Owen still has a way of getting a soccer reference into this
I
whole
knew that was
conversation.
coming.
What does he do? Well, the Radulov power play goal of that game, like you said, all the things, the walk of shame for Corey Perry, the fact that Blake Como and Andrej Sekera scored the Janmark power play goal, but that Radulov goal, everybody knew that was the play, right? The puck, move it around to his one-timer, and they couldn't stop it. And his celebration, Alexander Radulov was known for maniacally insane Tasmanian devil-style plays and celebrations, and we got exactly that. The place literally shook its foundation, and he did that incredible Hulk celebration right in front of the national TV cameras. It was a really special moment.